భారత సాయుధ దళాల్లో చేరి దేశానికి సేవ చేయాలనే వారి కళ నెరవేర్చుకోవడానికి భారత ప్రభుత్వం అగ్నిపథ్ పేరుతో ప్రత్యేకమైన అవకాశం కల్పిస్తోందని తూర్పు నౌకాదళాధిపతి వైస్ అడ్మిరల్ బిశ్వజిత్ దాస్ గుప్తా తెలిపారు. బుధవారం విశాఖపట్నం తూర్పు నౌకాదళం ముఖ్య కార్యాలయంలో ఏర్పాటు చేసిన మీడియా సమావేశంలో ఆయన మాట్లాడుతూ, త్రివిధ దళాల్లో సేవలందించేందుకు 17.5 ఏళ్ల నుంచి 21 ఏళ్ల వరకు యువతకు అగ్నిపథ్ పథకం ద్వారా అవకాశం కల్పిస్తున్నట్టు తెలిపారు. ఈ పథకం ద్వారా పౌర సమాజంలో సైనిక నైతికతతో పాటు యువతకు సాధికారత, క్రమశిక్షణ, నైపుణ్యం అందించడమే కాక భారత సైన్యం సగటు వయసు 32 సంవత్సరాల నుంచి 26 ఏళ్లకు తగ్గనుందని తెలిపారు. ఎంపికైన అభ్యర్థులకు 6 నెలల పాటు శిక్షణ ఇస్తామని, అనంతరం 4 ఏళ్ల పాటు సాయుధ దళాల్లో పనిచేసే అవకాశం ఉంటుందన్నారు. 4.5 సంవత్సరాల తర్వాత రిటైర్ అవుతారని, 4 ఏళ్లలో సంవత్సరానికి సుమారు 4,70,000 రూపాయల నుంచి 6,90,000 రూపాయల వరకు జీతంతో పాటు 48 లక్షల రూపాయల వరకు జీవిత బీమా కల్పిస్తారని తెలిపారు. 4 సంవత్సరాలు సర్వీస్ పూర్తయిన తర్వాత 11 లక్షల రూపాయల ట్యాక్స్ ఫ్రీ సర్వీస్ ఫండ్ ప్యాకేజీ అందజేస్తామని తెలిపారు. 4 సంవత్సరాల సర్వీస్ పూర్తయిన తర్వాత సర్వీసులో ఏదైనా ప్రమాదం జరిగి మరణిస్తే ₹1,00,00,000 వరకు పరిహారం అందించబడుతుందన్నారు. ఈ పథకం ద్వారా ఎంపికైన వారిని అగ్నివీరుగా పిలుస్తారని తెలిపారు. దేశంలో యువత ఈ అవకాశాన్ని సద్వినియోగం చేసుకుని దేశ సేవకు అంకితం కావాలని బిశ్వజిత్ దాస్ గుప్తా పిలుపునిచ్చారు.
After they keep doing their training as they move on in the service. But for the Agniveers,
as the new recruitment policy for the armed forces across the country. In addition to Vice Admiral Biswajit Das Gupta, AVSM, YSCNC, we have Rear Admiral Sanjay Saju, Admiral Superintendent Naval Dockyard Visakhapatnam on the left of the CNC, and we have on the extreme right of the CNC, and we have Commodore NP Pradeep, CO INS Chilka, and also the naval officer. Audio visuals on the Agnipath scheme, which will be followed by a short presentation.
ఉజ్వల భవిష్యత్ నా సొంతం. దేశం కోసం ఒక అగ్నిపథ్లా ఏదైనా చేయాలన్న తెగింపు. శత్రువుల గుండెలను చీల్చే సాయుధ దళం ఇచ్చే శిక్షణ నిలువెల్ల అనుభూతిని కలిగిస్తుంది. శారీరక దృఢత్వం కోసం పరుగు పందెంలో శిక్షణ, ఆకర్షణీయమైన జీతం మీ సొంతం అవుతాయి. అందుకే దేశ అగ్నివీరులుగా మారండి. సైనిక సేవ తరువాత లభించే బంగారు భవిష్యత్తు ఆదర్శనీయమైన నైపుణ్యంతో కూడిన పౌరుడిగా మారే గొప్ప అవకాశం. రండి, దేశ సైన్యంలో చేరి సామాజిక సేవతో పాటు దేశ సేవ చేసే భాగ్యాన్ని పొందండి.
it is an important briefing that I am making today to all of you, because this is quite a transformational change that has been made towards the recruitment of personnel below officer rank into the armed forces of India. Before this, that is at the moment, our personnel who join the three armed forces below the officer rank joined for a long time. In the case of the Navy, they join for a period, initial period, ranging from 15 to 20 years. And that is a fairly long time in the working life of any individual. We have a short service commission scheme for the officers where they serve for a shorter duration and they are permitted to leave if they wish to. That kind of a scheme was not available to personnel below officer rank till now. So it was felt by the leadership of the country that the youth of the armed forces, the youth of the country must be given the opportunity to serve in the armed forces without having a necessary commitment for a very long time. And therefore, the interaction with the youth brought to the front that many of them would like to serve in the armed forces, but they would like to serve for a shorter duration into the other streams of civil society or any other vocation that they choose to, or study further, or whatever else they would like to do. Therefore, this particular Agnipath scheme is now going to be the only way in which people below officer rank will be recruited into the three armed forces of the country. As you have read and seen in the media yesterday, the scheme has been approved by the Cabinet Committee on Security and it has been briefed to the national media yesterday. The three services have been directed to make their plans to put the scheme into operation. And we expect that within 6 months of date of the signing of the official order, we would be in a position to start the first recruitment on this scheme. You are aware that the age profile will be between 17 and a half to 21, which means by the time they finish 4 years and decide to leave, they will be anything between 21 and 24 years old, and they will be ready to take on any other aspect or any other facet or any other education that they would like to do at that stage. By that time, they would have earned a certain amount of money. They would have got a certain severance package, which is in the region of about 11 lakhs plus. And they would have gained 4 years of valuable experience in the armed forces. They would also have done some qualifications in the armed forces. And based on these qualifications, they will be given credit points for education, which credit points they can use to gain entry into higher education or even have themselves skill certified by the National Skill Qualification, National Skill Qualification Framework. So they would have got experience, they would have got some money with them, and they would have got credit points for further education. Now, I think one of the biggest advantages of this scheme is that it gives the youth a choice to do either to continue with the armed forces or do something else after 4 years. It also gives the choice to the armed forces to retain 25% of the intake. And obviously the people who do well, they would be considered for the permanent enrollment subsequently. Everybody will join together and they will leave together. But people who want to serve on a permanent basis will have to reapply. And based on their performance and merit in the 4 years, 25% of the strength would be retained in the armed forces for a further 15 years of pensionable service. Now, positives that will come out of the youth in these 4 years, and I think they will be an asset to any organization that takes them at the end of 4 years. Now, there is nothing that does not come without some hard work. This is a change for the armed forces, and it is for the armed forces to manage this change smartly, because this will call for a certain change in the training pattern. It will call for a certain change in their employment pattern. How do we optimally employ these youth for the period of 4 years? How does it benefit the youth and how does it benefit the service in the same manner? Therefore, there is some work to be done in the modalities of the training, how the training is to be done, what is the sequencing of the training, and once their training is over, where do they get posted, and how do we make it easy for them to leave at the end of 4 years. So these are the internal processes that we will have to review and change in the Army, in the Navy, and in the Air Force. Whenever there is a major change, there is always a little bit of apprehension, there's a little bit of resistance, and there is a little bit of fear about the future as to how it will happen. But it is for the Indian Armed Forces to make it happen, and we have been deliberating this for the past 2 years. Many ideas have been thrown back and forth. All the apprehensions and reservations that people had have been heard out, and the policy guidelines and procedures and the training mechanisms and everything that is going to be put into place, I am sure will address all the apprehensions, reservations and questions that people have, and they will be satisfactorily answered. One other thing which I would like to tell everyone is that this is a volunteer service. Like the armed forces, it is a volunteer service. Even this Agniveer is volunteer. It is not conscription, like many people think, we are going into conscription. It is not conscription. It is a volunteer service. People will volunteer to be Agniveers. No, we are not forcing anybody to come and join the armed forces. So they will be volunteers. At the end of 4 years, they will leave. And if they want to join back, they will once again be volunteers for the armed forces. So broadly, this is the outline of the scheme, and we are hopeful that with the policy guidelines that we are going to receive from the government and from the naval headquarters, we are confident of tailoring our training procedures and our employment procedures for these young people who are going to join the armed forces, and we will make the scheme a success without impacting the efficiency of the armed forces. So thank you very much. If there are any questions from any of you, I'll be very happy to answer. Agnipath scheme will be open to women also. The management of this recruitment has been left to the individual services, because each service has its own capacities and capabilities to induct women. It is likely that they may be in smaller numbers initially, but the intention is to slowly increase not only the numbers but also in the different branches that they can be taken. So the initial planning has been left to the armed forces to decide, and we are expecting policy guidelines in that regard.
Eligibility criteria
Will be class 10 because there are certain trades in which we do not require class 12 pass. So we are going to have, I should say, in the first 3 years, we will be taking about 3,000 each in the Navy, out of which about 2,800 would be 12th pass and about 200 would be 10th pass. That is our requirement in the Navy. There must be similar requirements in the Army and the Air Force as well. Yes, what we are going to do now is that since we are going to take people for 4 years, sitting here, that is where we do the basic training. That training is going to be now 16 weeks. And after that, they are going to be sent for 2 weeks orientation training to the ships. So there will be 16 there and 2. After which, we are going to put all of them to the professional schools, which are in Cochin and in other places, mainly in Cochin, but in many other places as well. They are going to go to the professional school to get their basic professional education for another 16 weeks. So you have 16 plus 16 plus 2, 32, 34 weeks of training is what we are going to invest in the Agniveers. And thereafter, for the rest of the 4 years, they are going to be available to the Navy for employment.
Now